Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street, the small business lenders help it grow. From the C-Suite, Orlando, Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. You guys busy these days?
A little bit, yeah. Just a bit.
I'm going to get into your numbers, but let's go to that bottom line on your bio there.
Oh, that's very out of date, Bob.
Oh, that's out of date. Have we hit $1 billion yet?
Oh yeah, we're at about $1.5 billion, about 68,000 PPP loans. So far.
Awesome. And how many jobs?
I think we're estimating about 225,000. I mean, so much of our recent PPP push has been to self-employed, so we only count, one job per loan for those.
Obviously. Well, but that counts. I mean, these people are hurting us.
Plus, we're trying to keep our 7A business going and booming, and it's a juggling act for us, as I'm sure it is for a lot of the folks on the call.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. I know you're very busy. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us and talk with us. Katie, good to see you.
Yeah, we've got a sunny day today, and my green screen's not lying today.
Let's go to the poll questions. Number one, has your institution been criticized by the SBA about loan packaging fees? Good, 91% no. Obviously, this was a key issue several years ago, Chris. That's probably taken a back burner, but it is still something SBA is looking at. The two takeaways on that I would give you, number one, they don't want a cookie cutter approach where you say the loan was ineligible and you do that for all the loans. And number two, every loan needs to be documented. Chris, what we found talking to people is where they get themselves in trouble is they don't do anything. They don't address this at all, and they don't do anything.
Right, yeah, and obviously you recall about a year ago, SBA was going to change how they did all these and have a tiered system and whatnot, but they obviously wisely decided to mothball that a little bit longer because of PPP. So, it's back to where it was, pre-PPP.
Right, and I do know that with this change in the process, one of the things they want to track is loan broker performance. There's been a lot of fraud in loan brokers. There's a lot of good loan brokers. Unfortunately, there's some bad apples there that have caused significant problems for several institutions.
Yep.
So they want to track that as well, what's going on with that.
Yep.
Number two, has your lending institution stopped accepting PPP applications? Katie, why are we asking this question?
Well, we have been kind of following this for a while. I know some institutions had cut it off a little early in case the funds ran out. They were concerned how that might look for their borrowers and how they would have to address that. And looking at this week's lending report from the SBA, it does look like there's a few less lenders, but not a significant amount. I believe that's about 3 less this week that didn't participate versus the previous week.
But we still have 1 in 5 that are not accepting PPP. Is that number shock you, Chris?
No, I think a lot of people have just been kind of freaked out with the error codes, the hold codes. I think they were worried about winding things down, giving themselves adequate time prior to the original date of March 31st. And so now that it's been extended, I think there's probably a lot of institutions that have decided just not to restart things and just kind of, spend their resources in other places. So I understand that. Obviously, that doesn't apply to us. We're continuing to accept and will do so until the end, until the money's run out. So
good. Chris, I'll put you on the spot of this question. You don't have to answer it. But the purpose of the hold codes was to hold down fraud.
Right.
A lot of fraud in PPP, although Katie's reported this 1% or less, which is normal for that.
Right.
Was it worth it? Was it worth putting Main Street and the lenders through this with the hold codes in order to get the desired result, which I assume is less fraud?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer that question, Bob, you have to make that assumption that this has resulted in less fraud, and I think it probably has. But it probably, because of the time delays it imposed on lenders and borrowers alike, I think, weighing that against the duration of the period of the program, I think the fact that they did extend the program, I think that was the right thing to do, obviously. I don't know. I mean, I think we're going to find out. We're probably not going to find out for years from now, maybe months. I don't know. But PPP is going to be with us for a long time.
I call this the Katie Roach Full Employment Act.
Yeah. I mean,
Katie,
we're going to have PPP for at least 5 years.
What do you think, Katie? Do you think that trade-off was fair?
Yeah, I was going to add to what Chris was saying. I don't know if we're really going to know the answer right away, especially since the SBA is still looking at these numbers. But until we really know how much fraud that this prevented, we don't really know if it was worth it. So it's a little hard right now looking at it thinking, oh gosh, there's all these hold codes that are in place. It's messing up the amount of time that's taking to get these loans through and everything like that. But we don't know how much it's actually prevented. It could be a significant number. And when the SBA starts getting those numbers, I'm sure the OIG is working on that right now. It might give us a sigh of relief after all is said and done when we realize that there was significant amounts of fraud that were prevented due to it. So we just really don't know yet.
I hope on this third question that we made a mistake on the percentages, but we want to know how SBA is doing on forgiving PPP loans over $2 million. As you can see, our percentages are low, but that's in line with our previous results. Hopefully, we have a lot of over 15% responses. So let's see what the results are. Nope. Ooh, 0%, 17%. So I'm wrong, Chris.
Yeah. Well, we only did a handful of over $2 million PPP loans to begin with, but so our numbers would be skewed. I think we're actually over 20% have been forgiven, but that's of a much smaller, base.
Yeah, and Kay, what is the universe we're talking about of over $2 million? How many loan numbers is it? What is it, about 500?
I haven't looked at the data too much recently. I think that over 2 million was pretty low last I checked. And I imagine there's a lot of institutions on the call that maybe only did 1 or 2 of those. And if those haven't gone through the system yet, that's going to artificially reduce it. However, if it has gone through, it's going to artificially raise it. So it's hard to say, but I don't think there were that many of those loans over 2 million. So I think we're probably, as soon as the SBA starts really getting this going and processing it, it's going to go a lot faster. It's just concerning for people right now who aren't sure what's happening. They're still waiting months now on forgiveness. That's going to deeply concern a lot of borrowers.
Chris, I'm a little fuzzy on the dates, so I should know the answer, and I don't. But when does the PPP forgiveness bomb hit? When does this affect the lenders and affect Main Street?
Well, again, it's you have to kind of back into it based on when it was closed. So if you look at that big bottleneck that was last April,
correct,
mid to end of last April 2020, then you got 16 months from then, which would put it at, let's see, May, June, July, August. So basically, it's going to hit the bomb, as you call it. Yeah, it's the summer. It's June through August is when the bulk of those. And by the way, I was just looking up the data which you were asking, and this round of PPP, so 2021, loans over $2 million, there's only 326 of them.
Yeah.
Loans between $1 million and $2 million, there's only 24,000. So I think if I recall the 2020 vintage PPP loans, I think there was maybe 140,000, maybe 200,000 max of loans that were over 2 million.
Yeah, but again, those are huge numbers. It impacts the banks. Yeah,
for sure.
They have auditors saying, hey, well, what is this? What's going on? It impacts borrowers in terms of is this now a loan?
Right.
It causes problems if there wants to be a transaction to sell the business, et cetera, et cetera. So. But SBA,
it's a relative low yielding loan. Remember too,
that's right. It goes to what, 1%?
Yeah. So
over what's the maturity?
Well, it depends on when the loan was closed. So either 2 years or 5 years. Once it was passed, I think the middle of June of last year, all loans are 5-year maturity.
5 years, yeah. But initially it's 2 years. Katie, what is the president doing these days about SBA?
Yeah, so we got the discretionary spending proposal late last week, and I've only just started to go through it. I know I wrote a thing about it today, and you probably got in your inbox, but there is still a lot more in there that could be going to small businesses, but specifically the Small Business Administration is looking at a 9.4% increase in spending over the 2021 enacted level, which is significant because in previous years, for the past, I want to say at least 5 or 6 years now, the SBA has been seeing much lower, in fact, less funding year over year. And this is one of the first years in a while we've seen a higher spending amount proposed. So that is significant. Also, it's looking like Congress does appreciate this and does like the idea. So I would expect this portion of it to probably stay as is.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the exhibits in The World Has Gone Mad. What? Only 9% increase? What's going on in Washington? Chris, you and I have been around for a long time, and there's been a lot of decreases. There's been zeroed out. So, you look at it.
Yeah, well, I remember when SBA had a budget over $1 billion, and they haven't had that in a while. So,
yeah.
I mean, look, the bottom line is SBA, I think, as everybody probably should recognize now. SBA, as I've always said, punches way, way above their weight class. I mean, they do more with this kind of a budget than I would argue just about any agency in Washington. And this is money well spent. I hope the ranking, members of the House and the Senate committee really understand what kind of impact SBA does with such relatively limited budget. I mean, it is amazing that they've been able to pump out what they have in the last year with a budget that was still, for staff purposes and whatnot, under $1 billion. That's unheard of in Washington. So this is overdue. Probably needs to be more, probably on the enforcement side, back to the fraud question. But I think, I think we should all wish that more agencies in Washington did as efficiently as SBA does.
I agree with you 100%. Good thoughts, Chris. I'm going to be working on an analysis. I would invite you to collaborate with me, except you probably have some other things to do.
Can I take a rain check till like July?
Oh, and you've chosen this time to build a house. Good for you. Let's just pile the stress on.
Yeah, a little bit of stress these days, yeah.
No, I want to compare what we did in 2008, 2009, when I say we as the United States, where we bailed out Wall Street, we bailed out General Motors, versus now we're bailing out Main Street. And I haven't seen that argument. I haven't seen the numbers. I haven't seen people argue for that. But this is truly a bailout for Main Street. And there's significant changes. 10 years ago, we had banks closing every Friday. We had restricted capital. Here we have access to capital. I'm not going to get political in terms of who's right, who's wrong. I don't care about that. What I care about is, are these solutions employing people and keeping the economy going with all this craziness that's going on? Anyway, so you got some time to help me put that together, Chris?
July.
Katie, guess what? You have a new assignment. Okay. Invest in underserved entrepreneurs. We talk about that. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so this is a portion of the discretionary funding request. It's about $31 million increase. I don't know what this number was before for 2020 or 2021. However, it is an increase there. This portion of it would go toward entrepreneurial development for minorities, women, people of color, underserved entrepreneurs, things like that. What they want to do with this funding is they want to expand free counseling, training, and mentoring services for small businesses and entrepreneurs.
And don't forget, underserved also has been classified as rural as well as veterans. So let's not forget those two. The problem that I have with this, Katie, I don't have a problem with it. The problem is data collection. Is that how do we, the government's been very clear in terms of, well, we don't want to go down and ask people for their data, for their ethnicity. So how do we solve this problem?
That is a problem they were addressing recently in the House, and actually the Senate had a committee meeting on it as well. They haven't really obviously come up with a answer to your question, but they are addressing it and trying to, especially with PPP, the question is, a lot of these people aren't filling out that final portion of their PPP forms, and that means we don't know the demographics as well. And Congress does want to make sure that that funding is going to people who really needed it, and make sure that certain minority groups and underserved groups are not getting cut out of the program. So that is a concern. They're looking into it, but I don't believe they have an answer to it yet.
Yeah, I know we're investing in additional in SBDC's outreach. We're investing in special programs, women's centers. Chris, any thoughts on this?
Well, the only thing I would say is, and I think I mentioned this a week or two ago, I mean, it's on the new, on the 2483C forms, so these are for Schedule C filers and F filers, you know, they are asked to volunteer the information, and I'm surprised when I look at the data that even though they're asked to do it, it's like 20% maybe that actually provide the demographic data.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just, so, you know, it is an issue of data. You don't want to force people to have to provide it. And as I said a week or two ago, maybe it's a good thing that more people perhaps don't want to provide it because they want to move beyond some of these classifications. I don't know, but it does make, when you want to base policy on these classifications, it makes it much more difficult to be defensible if you don't have the data.
I tend to think it's more of an entrepreneur mindset, which
Probably.
I'm not going to deal with any of that. I want to deal with the important things. That's not important to me personally. Therefore, I'm not going to, let's
Leave
move
me
on.
alone. Let me run my business. I think that is very prevalent for sure.
Strengthening the innovation ecosystem, $30 million. That sounds impressive.
Yeah, so this portion is intended to essentially help create, again, more training programs, focus on improving technology in small businesses, make sure they have the education on that they need. It's mostly going to be education programs here.
Yeah, and that will solve hopefully some of that outreach problem. Bolster efforts to Let me try that again. Bolster efforts to combat climate change. $10 million. We think this is what, more green program allocations?
Yeah. Based on how they're describing it, I think it sounds like they're probably wanting to expand funding for things like the 504 Green program, things like that. This is really the only description we have, but that's what it sounds like to me, at least.
Very good. Stats, where are we in numbers, Katie?
Yeah, so I broke out the last week versus this week, and this is the change. So this was the number of loans approved this week was 414.5 thousand. Net dollars, we're looking at almost $10 billion there. And we did see a decrease in lenders by 3. The newest numbers are showing that the lender count for this week was 5,241.
Put that in perspective, in 1 week, we blew out everything SBA did in 2019. I mean, the numbers are phenomenal. And after a while, your eyes tend to glaze over. But those numbers tell me, Chris, the system's working to an extent.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to look back, a year from now, maybe 6 months from now, and say, compared to some of the other programs that have been rolled out, and unfortunately, not to pick on the shuttered venue, but that's not been a good.
We're going to pick on them next.
Okay, but I think PPP, despite the bumpiness at the beginning and maybe a little bit since, it's actually, I think it's done what it was intended to do. And I think I think we're going to look back and go, wow, that was kind of amazing.
Especially those first draws. First draws are critical. We can criticize SBA on restaurant and shuttered venues now. We're well into a year, and we still haven't got those out. But at least PPP is working. We got 1 and 2 and idle, and some things are working. And as you said, hats off to the lending community and to SBA for what they're doing on that. Real quick, Katie, these are the 4 things we're covering.
Yeah, so these are things that we're still waiting for, and we've been waiting for a little while now. We're still waiting on the 504 debt refi guidance. We know it's available, but we don't know exactly how that program's supposed to work yet. So we're waiting on guidance on that. The Shuttered Venue Operators Grant opened last week and was open for maybe about 3 or 4 hours there, and then they had to close it due to technical.
Oh, was it actually open? It was actually
yeah,
open.
it was open for a few days or a few hours there, but it had to close due to technical issues. The SBA is still, I checked their website today, they're still closed, but they are going to inform interested parties as soon as they're ready to open. They'll give a heads up before they open it. So hopefully as soon as possible, but we don't know when that's going to be reopening yet. Restaurant grants, we still don't know the opening date for that, but they are still working on that. Hopefully soon. The SBA has been addressing that they are going to be opening it, but again, we don't know dates yet on that and or full guidance on it really. And then the cutoff for PPP lending, that was something that you added this morning. We don't know if we're going to run out of funding and if this is the last straw. I'm guessing this is the last straw, but you know, we don't know how Congress is going to address that yet either.
SBA does a quarterly call. They're doing one today, and we try not to overload them. I think, anyway, Katie, you're going to cover that tomorrow. We'll have the PowerPoint. If it's something you really want to do, get a hold of your district office. And I think at one time they had a cap of lines, and I said that. Now I think it's open for anyone to. Real quick.
Yeah, now it's. They're doing it from a different system, so I think they can now open it up to quite a few more people.
Okay, great. Brian says, if forgiveness has been submitted to the SBA and is pending their review, does the lender need to start collecting payments once the deferral period is up? Brian, we don't know what the structure of that is. We're waiting for final guidance on that, on how that is all going to work. So that's why I was asking Chris, if the bomb sounds like August for the first. The answer is we don't know. We know something's obviously going to have to happen. And Brian clarified that June 5th, 2020 was the end of the 2-year term for PPP loans. Thank you very much for that, Brian. Well, very good. Chris, thank you for your time. I know you're a little busy. Where's your Baylor National Winners shirt?
I guess they had to print so many of them to send them out. I haven't gotten mine yet, so maybe next week I'll be able to wear it.
Very good. Katie, enjoy your sunny weather. Lance is getting ready for our webinar at 11 o'clock. Pacific, please, if you want to do that, send me an email. We'll do all the paperwork. We're talking about 159. We're talking about affiliate issues. We're talking about documentation, and as well as the new requirements of how to submit those. So a lot of moving parts in that. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.
Everybody.